Hello everybody and welcome to a very exciting video because today we're going to be talking about some very important C# concepts that if you can master, it's going to make you a much better developer because it's going to allow you to write much cleaner code that's very modular and extensible. So today we're going to be talking about inheritance and interfaces, and I'm going to be showing you how we can use these to essentially make a whole upgrade system for my Bloons tower defense clone that I'm recreating in Unity. And this is really cool because we don't necessarily need to know exactly everything about what we're upgrading in order to upgrade it. So later down the line, if we want to add, different towers and different upgrade behaviors to our game, we can do that without changing the core upgrade system. Now I have to say that in order to make this work, we use a lot of classes in order to make everything a lot more modular. So I'm going to start this video off by just kind of going over like the higher level architecture, just so you can see kind of how I have everything laid out. That's going to be extremely helpful for you when you go to solve these problems in your own game. Anyways, if you do enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like button. Also feel free to subscribe to the channel for lots more videos about video game development. Of course, if you do have any questions for me or suggestions for future videos, you can always leave those down in the comments section below. So for starters, let me just go ahead and demonstrate this upgrade behavior. So we can go ahead and place this tower down in our world. And you'll see that we do have these two options to upgrade the range as well as upgrade to piercing darts. Now I already went over in my previous video about how I set up the UI for this, so I'm not going to be going over that. I can leave a link to that video up in the card as well as in the description below. But basically, if we want to upgrade our range, you'll see that basically this is kind of the effective range where we can detect balloons coming through, as well as that's how far we can kind of throw darts. So if we do our range upgrade, you'll see that our range expands. So now when we start the round and balloons start flowing through, we'll detect them when they're right at the edge here. Now you'll see that the dart is just popping one balloon at a time. You'll also notice that it is kind of like a blue circle. Again, this is just kind of placeholder art for now. So if we do upgrade to the piercing darts, then you'll see that it turns into kind of a magenta colored, and then now we can pop two balloons at a time. So basically these are the two upgrades that we're going to be implementing in today's video. The extra range as well as upgrading to piercing darts. And once you understand how to implement both of these, any other kind of thing that you want to implement into your game as far as upgrades go, it's going to be a lot easier for you. Okay, so now to go over some of the relevant classes that we're going to be dealing with. So basically we're just going to be looking at the dart tower today. Now every tower in my game has something known as the tower controller. And the tower controller is basically a container for, everything about that tower. It's just kind of like one central place that we can always look at to look at other things about that tower. Now on that tower controller is a variable of type tower attack. Now tower attack is an abstract class. It's just a plain old C# class. It does not inherit from mono behavior. So it's not like a component that we can drop on the game object. And again, it's an abstract class. So we can't actually have a base tower attack on the tower controller. We have to have something derived from the tower attack. But the tower attack is still important because it does have some default implementations, and the tower attack also implements the upgrade range interface. That's because the tower attack has a reference to the tower balloon detector, which again is basically that radius of how we can actually detect balloons within the specified range. And because of the power of interfaces, we can do something really cool where the tower balloon detector, it also implements the upgrade range interface, and it's its own separate implementation that is completely different than the tower attacks implementation of it. So that's really one of the main draws about interfaces, is that we can essentially assign them to any class that we want, even though those classes may handle those interfaces differently. Now again, the tower attack is an abstract class. So for the dart tower, the tower attack is actually going to be a projectile attack script, which derives from the tower attack base class. Now that projectile attack class is going to implement the upgrade weapon interface. That's because different types of attack don't necessarily throw weapons. So for example, there's kind of the freeze tower, which freezes everything in a radius, and that doesn't necessarily have a weapon associated with it. And so these two interfaces that you see, the upgrade range as well as the upgrade weapon, these are actually where we're going to be setting the kind of new properties about our dart tower. And another important class that I should point out is the tower upgrade class. This is another plain old C# class. It's not a mono behavior or anything like that, and it is also an abstract class. This does have some base implementation for when we purchase upgrades, so that's what actually decrements the money in the bank. And then basically inheriting from the tower upgrade, we have our different types of upgrades. So we have a range upgrade as well as a weapon upgrade class. And then on these derived classes, we're basically going to be checking for the associated interface. So for say the weapon upgrade, we're going to be looking for the I upgrade weapon interface. If we do find that, we're going to call the set weapon method that's on that I upgrade weapon interface. So I'm just going to give you an overview of the call stack so you can kind of know where things are going when I get to the coding section. So basically when the user clicks on one of the upgrade buttons, let's say he clicks on the button for the piercing darts, again, that's going to be the weapon upgrade. In that case, it's going to call the upgrade tower method that we assign to that button within the UI controller. Again, I went over this in the previous video where I set up all the UI for the upgrade system. And then that method calls the associated tower upgrades purchase upgrade method. And so on the purchase upgrade method, it's going to check the tower controller's tower attack. So again, in the case of the dart monkey, this is the projectile attack. And it's going to see if it upgrades the I upgrade weapon interface. If it does, then it's going to call the set weapon method associated with that script. This is also where it's going to call the base tower upgrade.purchase weapon. So that's what's actually going to decrement the money from the bank. And then on the tower attack, we're just going to need to implement that set weapon function in order to set the projectile equal to the new weapon that we want to assign. And for each upgrade, I've set up a scriptable object, which is going to have some properties about the upgrade. So in the case of the weapon, this is actually where we're going to be setting the new weapon prefab, and then we can pass that along to the projectile attack script, where we'll actually set the projectile to that new weapon prefab. All right, now I know that might kind of sound like a lot, and there are kind of a lot of moving pieces going on here. But again, I structured my architecture in this way so that if I do want to kind of extend things, I can do that fairly easily just by adding in the actual parts that I need and kind of just dropping them into place without breaking everything else. And if you're feeling a little lost right now, don't worry. I think things will start to make a little bit more sense as we step through the code here. So real quickly, I just want to show off in the UI script, this is basically where we set up the behavior that we want to associate with that button. So we just do button.onClick.addListener. And then on here, we're going to add in the upgrade tower method. The upgrade tower method takes in a parameter for the upgrade, which again is that tower upgrade class, and I'll be showing you that in a second, as well as the tower controller, which again is kind of that base container for everything about the tower. And then the main thing that this upgrade tower function is doing is just calling the purchase upgrade on that tower upgrade class. So let's take a look at the tower upgrade class. Again, this is an abstract class, and again, it does not inherit from mono behavior, just a plain old C# class. So here we have the base purchase upgrade. You'll see that it is a public virtual void for purchase upgrade. If you're not familiar with this term virtual, it basically means that any derived class, we're going to be able to override this function in them. And the base purchase upgrade, all it's doing is setting is purchased equal to true, and then it's calling gameController.instance.decrement money by the cost of the upgrade. And by the way, this cost property is basically just set in our tower upgrades scriptable object. So then down here, you'll see that this is where we have the range upgrade, which inherits from tower upgrade. So this is not an abstract class, meaning that we can actually have instances of it. And you see the only property on here is the range value. And again, that's just getting it from the scriptable object. And we do have the public override for the purchase upgrade. So of course, this takes in the tower controller, and then we look at the tower controller's tower attack. And then we say, if it is I upgrade range, meaning does it implement the I upgrade range interface, we're going to execute these steps. One thing to point out is you'll see that I do have this local variable called range upgrade after that. What that's going to do is it's kind of doing two things in this if statement here. So not only are we checking if the tower controller's tower attack implements the I upgrade range, if it does, then we're going to store that tower attack as a variable called range upgrade. However, this range upgrade variable is of type I upgrade range. So this is where interfaces are maybe a little bit confusing, but if you kind of understand what's going on, you can really see how powerful these interfaces are. So again, we actually have reference to the tower attack on the tower controller. However, we're treating it as an I upgrade range interface. So then what we can do is we can do a range upgrade dot set range, passing in the range value. Again, this is just the range value that we have up here. And you'll see after that, we'll also call the base.purchase upgrade, which is what decrements the money from the bank. But really the main thing to take away from here is if we have a class that implements the particular interface that we want, then we can basically treat that class as if it were that interface. So now to actually take a look at that class, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the base abstract class of Tower Attack. You see that it implements the I upgrade range interface. Again, like I mentioned, everything in my game that has this Tower Attack component on it is going to have some sort of range. So I can basically guarantee that the range on it is going to be upgradable. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that every tower is going to have a range upgrade. This just means that every tower has the ability to have a range upgrade. So this would make it so if I were working with some designers on this project, they could basically just create a new scriptable object for a particular range upgrade for any tower and then assign it to that tower and everything will just work. Now, if you haven't used interfaces before, this is basically what the declaration of one looks like. We just do a public interface and the interface name in this case is I upgrade range. Interfaces typically are going to start with a capital I, and then the rest of it is going to be sort of a description of what it does. And you'll see basically all we do here is just declare the signature of any functions that we want to force implementation of. So in this case, the function that we want is going to return void. It's going to be called set range, and it's going to take in a float for new range value. And so going back to the Tower Attack script here, we can scroll down to the set range and you'll see that this is where we actually set the implementation of the set range function. So now you'll see that our method actually does two things. The first thing it's going to do, it's actually going to set the range to the new range value. And then the other thing it's going to do is on the tower balloon detector, again, that's kind of the radius that sits around the tower, which detects balloons as they come in on the path, it's going to call the set range function on that. So now here's another really cool thing about interfaces is we can have these interfaces basically on any class that we want, and it can set up its own implementation of that interface. So you'll see on this tower balloon detector, this is a mono behavior. So this is a script that's attached to a game object as a component. And it also implements the I upgrade range interface. And you'll see that it has its own set range function. And its own set range function is basically going to be doing something completely different than the set range function on the Tower Attack script. You'll see that in this case, we're basically just setting the scale, and this is what expands the range so we can detect balloons in a larger radius. So I'm just going to quickly step through everything one more time, but this time we're going to look at the weapon upgrade path. So again, when we first select our tower, we're going to add that listener to the upgrade button, which calls this upgrade tower function, which passes in information about the upgrade as well as the tower that is going to be upgraded. The upgrade tower function basically just calls the purchase upgrade on that tower upgrade. Because the actual tower upgrade class that's being called is the child weapon upgrade, we're going to go to the override first for the purchase upgrade, and then we're going to check if the tower attack associated with the tower controller is I upgrade weapon, meaning that it implements the I upgrade weapon interface. And again, we're going to refer to that tower attack as weapon upgrade. Again, we're basically going to treat this tower attack as something called the weapon upgrade. And here is the signature for the I upgrade weapon. You'll see that the function is just called set weapon, and it takes in a game object for new weapon prefab. So now if that tower attack does implement the I upgrade weapon interface, we're just going to call the base purchase upgrade, which takes the money out of the bank and marks this upgrade as already been purchased. And then we're going to call the weapon upgrade dot set weapon, and we're going to pass in the weapon. You'll see that the weapon is just a property in here called weapon, which points back to the weapon that I've set in the scriptable object. So now you'll notice that when we go to the base abstract class tower attack, it does not implement the I upgrade weapon interface. So for that, we'll actually have to go to the projectile attack class, which is the actual tower attack class that is sitting on the dart tower, which inherits from tower attack, and it also implements the I upgrade weapon interface. You can see that we just have a private game object here for the projectile, And then all we're doing in the set weapon function is just setting projectile equal to the new weapon prefab that we're passing in from that function. And that is basically it. I know there were some things that I kind of skimmed over and kind of just scratched the surface on a couple of things. But basically this allows us to upgrade towers in our tower defense game. So again, when we have our tower here, when we select it, you'll see that it loads in with these upgrade buttons. If we want, we can say upgrade the range, and the range is going to be big enough to detect balloons in a much wider radius. Again, and then we can upgrade to the piercing darts upgrade, and this is going to allow us to shoot through 2 balloons at a time with 1 single dart. So anyways, I know this was a lot of information, but if you're able to follow along with it, and you can kind of start to see how you can use these interfaces and some kind of class inheritance in your own project, you can kind of start to see how this makes your project much more modular and extensible. And then if you do want to add in features at a later date, you can do so pretty easily and even empower your designers and other, non-programming developers to add more features to your game. So this really kind of breaks away from, essentially just hard coding everything. If you're just starting out, maybe hard coding things seems a lot easier, but as you go along and start to get a lot more experienced, it's actually going to give you a lot less headaches if you set yourself up with some good advanced architecture like this, so that if you were to ever add some new features into your game, it's not going to completely break everything. So anyways, I do hope that you did find today's video helpful, and I really encourage you to go out on your own and try out some of these things that you may have learned today. I don't blame you if you don't totally understand it and you weren't like following me 100% the whole way. There were a lot of things going on. But if you do have any questions for me, feel free to ask those down in the comment section below. And if you did learn something, I would really appreciate if you hit that like button. Also, feel free to subscribe to the channel for lots more videos about video game development. Of course, if you have any, suggestions for any future videos, feel free to leave those down in the comment section below. And if you do know of anyone who may find this video helpful, feel free to share it with them. Anyways, hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.